Throughout the generations, Jews have dreamt of returning to Zion. The destruction of the Beit HaMikdash in the State of Israel 2,000 years ago created a void in the life of every Jew who for centuries wandered in hostile foreign lands. Customs like breaking the glass at weddings and singing L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim or Im Eshkachech Yerushalayim, If I Forget Thee, O Jerusalem, were the only small reminders of Jerusalem that we steadfastly held on to. We knew we would return, and we did. Our dreams, hopes and prayers of returning to Jerusalem would be answered, and they were. 200 years ago, the Jews from Europe and North Africa trickled back to Jerusalem. In the early 1800s, the students of the great Vilna Gaon made Aliyah and started to redeem and reclaim Jerusalem. The Jerusalem spark had been lit. In 1882, following a dream and believing that the Mashiach, the Messiah, was imminent, a few Yemenite Jews made the difficult trek from Yemen to Jerusalem. And after a few initial setbacks, a village was thriving above the Shiloach springs, overlooking the city of David and the old city of Jerusalem. Torah learning, the sweet sounds of prayer from the synagogues, and the happy voices of Yemenite children in the Cheder could be heard throughout the village. At its peak, 144 Yemenite families lived in Kfar HaTeimanim. But all this came to a sudden halt with the thunderous and murderous pogroms of 1929 and the pogroms between 1936 to 1938. The British promised the Jewish refugees could return to their homes. The British promised to protect the Yemenite synagogues and the holy sites. They broke their promises, and the main synagogue, Ohel Shlomo, was desecrated. Arabs looted and squatted in our holy site. It was the sad end of Kfar HaTeimanim in the Shiloach. The Jerusalem dream was once again shattered, but we knew we would return to the Yemenite village of Shiloach, and this we did. First, 1967 in the miraculous Six-Day War, we returned to the Temple Mount and to the Old City, but many of our Jewish homes and the holy sites were still occupied by Arabs. The Yemenite village and the old Yemenite Beit Knesset were calling out, "Where are my people? Where are my people?" Ateret Cohanim answered the call.
In the month of Nisan, 5764, March 2004, Jewish families and yeshiva students returned to the village after a sad and forced break of 66 years. At exactly 1 a.m, the signal was given to move. Tension and excitement levels were at their maximum, especially when news was received that the approach teams and guards had entered both buildings. Everything was running smoothly. We had returned home, and it felt exhilarating to be part of the redemption of Jerusalem.
Also on today, a visit to a new Jewish community in the East Jerusalem neighborhood of Silwan, which is reconstructing the Yemenite community from the beginning of the century.
The Yemenites have returned home, reads the sign on the new apartment of Meushar and Aharona Umesi Jews of Yemenite descent. The Umesis are one of 8 families and 13 yeshiva students who've recently moved into 2 buildings in the East Jerusalem Shiloach village just south of the Temple Mount.
Bet Yehonatan and Bet Advash were alive, but the old Yemenite Beit Knesset was still being desecrated and crying out for her rightful Jewish heirs. That was going to take another 11 years before we managed to reclaim the Beit Knesset. Surrounded by some hostile Arab neighbours who haven't yet come to terms with Am Yisrael returning to her land, or with Jews returning to the old Yemenite village, the Jewish families have found themselves under daily fire, with attacks on the vehicle which takes them in and out of the village and on their homes. But our families, children and students have mesirut nefesh and are resolute and strong, full of faith. We return to the Yemenite village and we won't be driven out again.
האמירה שלנו הכי חזקה היא לא דגל, היא זה שאנחנו גרים פה.
צריך להתפלל לקדוש ברוך הוא, בונה ירושלים שתהיה לנו את הכוח, את הדעה, את השכל, את רוח הגבורה.
Over the last few months, with the financial help of investors who purchased themselves 2 buildings, and with the help of generous donors, Ateret Cohanim has managed to add more Jewish life to Bet Ovadia and Beit Frumkin. One family even has connections with the old and original Yemenite Jews who arrived in 1882.
Shalom, shalom. Daniel Luria, the Executive Director of Ateret Cohanim, also involved with the Committee for the Renewal of Jewish Life in the Yemenite Village. Speaking to you first in the morning, a few hours after the emergence of this new acquisition called Bet Ovadia. Over 30 yeshiva students, workmen, and security guards came into this building, and also a second building called Bet Funkin after Rabbi Yisrael Dov Funkin, who helped Yemenite Jews many years ago. Here we are overlooking Har Habayit, the old city, the city of David, Mount Zion, Har Tzion, Abu Tor, something spectacular, and of course the Shiloach Springs. One can only imagine what it must have been like for the Jews in the previous century. The Yemenite Jews are here, even those Jews who were surrounded so many times in history by enemies trying to take Yerushalayim. We've come back home, and here I am in Bet Ovadia.
The dust has settled. It's already now a few months after we first moved in here. Thank God a little bit of renovation work has taken place, and there are actually 2 families living here, one of which you will soon meet, Ariel Shemen. But 2 families living in this building complex, where ultimately there will be 4 families. Bet Ovadia, one of the 2 new buildings we moved into over the last few months. And did you know that your family had roots specifically here in the old Yemenite village? That was something that your family already knew about, from the El Nadav family?
Yeah. Before I came to Israel, it was something that I researched extensively.
So in some ways, as I just mentioned, you're closing the cycle, because we were kicked out of here. Your family was kicked out of here in 1938, in those years, the pogroms, and now Jews are returning to the Yemenite village. What is it like to be able to live here in the area?
It's an unbelievable zchut. I'm not sure I completely understand what amazing miracle I'm part of.
So at the moment, at our dinner, we shouldn't take it for granted. It's a very, not just unique, but the amount of devotion and dedication you need to live in a place like this. This is not the middle of Caulfield, Melbourne. It's not the middle of Brooklyn, New York, or Englewood, New Jersey. Although it has amazing views of the Temple Mount and the city of David, it requires enormous amounts of devotion, ideology to be able to live here, surrounded by people that don't necessarily love us. But the Shemin family are one of a number of families who are willing to be at the forefront, to be pioneers here, to bring back Jewish life to the heart of Yerushalayim. Todah Rabah. And now the icing on the cake. Now the Beit Knesset. Ohel Shlomo. Only a few weeks ago, after 77 years of destruction, desecration, and illegal Arab building in and around the Beit Knesset, and 130 years after it was first established, we have part of the original Yemenite Beit Knesset back in our hands. I've just entered the courtyard of the old Beit Knesset, the old synagogue, Yemenite synagogue that was called Ohel Shlomo. Part of the Heichal today will be called Heichal Yonatan for Jonathan Pollard. But to be back in the original Beit Knesset, this was the main Beit Knesset at that time, is something even more than one of the residential buildings that we've moved back into. The Arabs have basically turned the whole synagogue into apartments. Small little rooms everywhere. You couldn't see anything of the original dome. You couldn't see anything of the original stones, and today it's all been uncovered.
Today it's the first Yemenite tefillah in this synagogue in Ohel Shlomo. I bring my family. That the roots of our family start here.
The Jewish prayers have been truly answered. The joy of redemption is indescribable, and our families in the Yemenite village are thrilled. The original Beit Knesset is back. We have returned home. We have returned home.
Now that there's a Beit Knesset, we're here to stay, that's it.
And I want to thank the women who live here, because nothing matters if you don't have Jews living on the land. You can buy property, but when the Jews live there and make it holy, and these women do, that's what makes Jerusalem ours, that's what makes the land of Israel ours.
Yerushalayim, ifkadeti shomri, sheyom yagia ve'yeh echad mehem, sheyom yagia ve'yeh echad mehem, sheyom yagia ve'yeh